Hey, it's episode 3 of The Prospect Wizard. I am Greg Miraz, The Prospect Wizard, and for those of you who are tuning in that have listened to us, watched us before, yes, I killed that really corny intro. Why? Well, quite frankly, because I did it myself and it stunk. So we're retooling the intro. We have some top men on it so that it sounds better, so that you don't open up watching or listening to the show to some really bad blues background and my voice trying to be overly dramatic. Because, well, that's not what we want here. So, this is episode 3 of The Prospect Wizard, and to recap, our first episode was on baseball's number 1 overall prospect, Yoan Moncada, and episode 2 was on top pitching prospect, number 3 overall prospect in baseball, Lucas Giolito. Now, both of those are White Sox guys, and yes, I still have that White Sox stuff behind me. It's not coming down. Yeah, I'm doing this from my room, so don't get too angry at me. I really don't have the patience to start taking stuff down off the walls just for a 10-minute segment that we record. So, it's not going to happen. If you want it to happen, great. But if not, then I think you should probably just let it be. I'm going to let it be. We, in our first 2 episodes, also talked about guys that are very close to being Major League ready. And we said in the first episode, we're going to talk about guys who are nowhere close to being Major League ready, and that's the subject of today's Prospect Wizard, Brendan Rodgers. Brendan Rodgers is a ways away from being in the big leagues. Brendan Rodgers was the 3rd overall pick in the 2015 Major League Baseball draft by the Colorado Rockies out of Lake Mary High School in Winter Park, Florida. Winter Park, Florida is where he was born. But Brendan Rodgers is one of those guys that fits the mold of a high-risk, high-reward prospect. Now, if he's listening, he's probably thinking, I'm not high-risk, high-reward. I'm low-risk, high-reward. And the Rockies saw somebody that they thought would make an impact on their team years down the road. Now, they drafted him when they still had Troy Tulowitzki on their roster. They didn't realize that Trevor Story was going to be as big of a hit as he was at the big league level, and if he comes back healthy, which we all hope that he does, there may not be a space immediately for Brendan Rodgers when he's ready to make the jump to the big league level. I value position player talent at the college level because I think it's proven talent. It's talent that has been fully developed, and if you get a top round position player from an SEC school, a Pac-12 school, a Big 12 school, any school in a strong baseball conference, you're getting somebody that is probably going to be a future big leaguer. And has a chance to excel at the big league level. Case in point, the guy who was taken 2nd overall in Brendan Rodgers' draft, Alex Bregman, who started off in single-A quad cities back in 2015, and by the middle of 2016 had already made his Major League debut. So that's a guy who is a high-reward, low-risk talent. The number 1 pick in that draft was a guy who has also already made the big leagues, Dansby Swanson. Now, Brendan Rodgers was the only high schooler taken in the first 4 picks. 5th overall pick was an Astros high schooler, Kyle Tucker, and we will get to Kyle Tucker in a future episode. But Brendan Rodgers has got that unique talent of being a high bat speed guy who plays a good shortstop, has good speed, and really good power. You look at his statistics over the course of his first few professional seasons. In Rookie League Grand Junction, 20 RBI in 37 games, hit .273 with a .340 on base, .420 slugging, which is a pretty good number, struck out 37 times in 143 at-bats. This season with Low A Asheville of the South Atlantic League, the Tourists, which, by the way, great logo, the Tourists. It's a moon with sunglasses and a hat on it. I'm a big fan of great minor league baseball logos. Rodgers hit 19 home runs, drove in 73 runs over 110 games, where he hit 281. Now, if you put those numbers over the course of a 162 game season, let's just say, give or take, he plays 150 games. This is a guy who's going to hit 30 home runs and drive in close to 100 runs. Let's just say that he's going to be around 95 runs if he puts up numbers around that type. His batting average on balls put in play this season. Now, BABIP is one of those advanced stats that Fangraphs likes to put out. So batting average on balls put in play is essentially taking the at-bats that you have when you put the ball in play. It's basically non-strikeout at-bats and how many hits you have, and that's your BABIP. So your BABIP is usually always going to be higher than your batting average. In fact, unless you never struck out, your BABIP will always be higher than your batting average. So he had a BABIP this season of 319 for an overall average of 281. In rookie Grand Junction, he had a BABIP of 346 with an overall average of 273. So the BABIP going down is not a bad indicator. It's actually a good indicator because he's striking out less. So if your batting average on balls put in play is higher, you're probably going to be striking out a little bit more just based upon how many at-bats you have. So if your BABIP is higher, then you're probably, if the batting average is lower, you've got a decent amount of strikeouts because they're going to be lesser at-bats for you to get those same amount of hits. So, but the thing about Brendan Rodgers that I just love is the ceiling on him is so high. For a guy who is so young, I mean, he's got plus power. For a guy who is 6 feet and 180 pounds. He hit 19 home runs in 110 games for a 6 foot, 180 pound guy. I mean, that is not your prototypical power hitting shortstop body. But it's that bat speed that all the scouts talk about. It's the main thing that you find when you look up Brendan Rodgers is that you see this incredible bat speed and you're like, how does this guy have this much power at this size? Well, you look at how Jose Bautista of the Toronto Blue Jays formulate the recording of this episode. Still not determined where Jose Bautista is going to sign. He may go back to the Blue Jays. You don't know at this point. Bat speed can take an average hitting guy and turn him into a plus power guy. And that's what you see with Brendan Rodgers. The thing, though, about Brendan Rodgers is that he is only 20 years old. He's not going to turn 21 until August of this upcoming year. So he is a long ways away from the major leagues. Now, the Rockies have a couple of interesting decisions to make. Do they want to start him this season at High A Lancaster of the California League, which is probably the most logical step for him, or do they want to skip him to Double A Hartford? Now, the California League in the minor leagues is known as the Best Hitters League. It's the league that will see a jump in home runs. You're going to find more runs scored and higher ERAs in the California League than you will in pretty much any other league in minor league baseball. If I'm correct, and I believe that I am, the last time I looked at the stats, last year there was only one team ERA of the, at that time, 10-team California League that was under 3. That was the Bakersfield Blaze, R.I.P. Bakersfield Blaze, and R.I.P. High Desert Mavericks. So the two new teams in the Carolina League this season, as the California League has been reduced to 8. But the Hangar, home of the Lancaster Jethawks, where Brendan Rodgers could potentially be going this season, that's a spot where he could end up tearing the cover off the ball. Do the Rockies want to even try jumping him to Double A? Is a 20-year-old going to be ready for that at this point? He certainly put up numbers in low A that deserve a promotion. There's no way that he's going to repeat the level. But if he performs well in high A, do you put a guy that's that young up in double A? I love Brendan Rodgers. I think that this guy, and if you talk to scouts, there's a scout that, and I didn't really talk to him about it directly, Jim Pransky, scout for the Colorado Rockies, based out of the Quad Cities. Jim is a great guy. If you've ever had a chance to read any of his books, he writes some great nonfiction. Read two of his books on Neil Kotz and John Flaherty. I highly recommend them. Very good baseball stories. He never commented much on Brendan Rodgers, but when scouts would see him, they'd be like, "Hey Jim, were you in on Brendan Rodgers? Did you see it? Were you convinced about Brendan Rodgers?" Simply put, the amount of publicity that he gets is well warranted just because he's put up such good numbers at such a young age. We'll see what he does in 2017. But I really like what Brendan Rodgers can bring to the table. And basically, they've drafted another Troy Tulowitzki. He's the number 6 overall prospect in all of baseball, according to MLB Pipeline. He's the top shortstop prospect in the Rockies system. He's the number 1 overall prospect in the Rockies system. He is, though, according to MLB Pipeline, the 3rd shortstop prospect behind J.P. Crawford of the Phillies, who played last year mostly with the Lehigh Valley Iron Pigs, has yet to make his Major League debut, and J.P. Crawford's a guy we're going to get to in future episodes, and Dansby Swanson, the former star of the Vanderbilt Commodores. So, as we wrap up this episode, I want to remind you, you can follow us on Twitter, at Prospect Wizard, like our Facebook page, The Prospect Wizard. Send me an email, prospectwizard@gmail.com. That's where you're going to find all of our content is on our Facebook and Twitter. Go to SoundCloud, that's where we store our audio-only files, and go to YouTube, that's where we have our video episodes. The Prospect Wizard is how you can find both of those. So, episode 4. Who are we going to talk about this time? Well, there's been a lot of talk about pitching prospects that you don't necessarily know a whole lot about, but just the buzz on them says that they are going to be top guys, and they are going to use talent to excel to the next level. So we're going to talk about the number 13 overall pitching prospect in all of baseball. He was acquired in a trade from the Red Sox this past season. Sent him to the Padres for Major League lefty Drew Pomeranz. That's righty Anderson Espinoza. So, that is who we're going to talk about next time here on the Prospect Wizard. Have a great day, everybody. We will talk to you next time.